That's what we're talking Eagles here on Birds 365 and Mac Guys with our bud from down the shore, Mike Gill from the Sports Bash. All right, let's get it out of the way. What are you wearing today, Gill?
Tennessee Brewery. I was at in Nashville.
All right, Tennessee Brewery. So we've stopped with the smart guy T-shirts.
Now he's showing his true colors. Yeah. We're drinking. That's the only thing that matters. We're drinking, says Mike Gill. Yeah. Very nice.
Summertime, man. The school is out of
your little IPA YouTube. How's that going? Are those popular? You open up the beers.
They are. I actually have been getting people down the shore asking me when's the next one? When are you putting out another? I've had actually some people reach out about sponsoring. So yes, they're doing pretty well. In fact,
there we go.
Yeah. I've been kind of, been known as a beer connoisseur. I'm not quite Glenn Mack now yet, but
on the way.
Have you tried any of Glenn's beers, any of Glenn's IPAs? I'm sure you have. Some of the Philly
probably beers. Somewhere along the way. Yes. The Concha Hawkins stuff. Yeah, I was up there around Christmas time last year. I was up that way.
All right. Yeah.
Glenn's stuff is actually pretty damn good. And I'm old school Budweiser guy who
same here. I'm not a big IPA guy. I just but
they've been doing a nice
I don't know when the changeover happened. In fact, our Friday shows down the shore here on 97.3 are branded as happy hour Fridays, and if you text in a suggestion for me to try, we enter you in for a chance to win concert tickets, show tickets. We gave away a golf simulator last week.
Nice. You got some good prizes there, Gil. You're taking care of your listeners. All right. Hey, Eagles took care of their players yesterday, giving out championship rings. Kind of did under the cover of darkness, unlike the Phillies, who had a major ceremony before their third game of the season. And as per social media, got a chance to look at the ring. Looks like a pretty cool ring. Who did it right? Who did it wrong? Eagles for understating it, Phillies for overstating it.
Probably the Eagles in the end did it right. I mean, they didn't win the ultimate goal, and they just kind of slipped another. The Phillies, though, you can never accuse them of not knowing how to put on a party. I mean, they're always the best at opening day and the ceremonies and rolling out the red carpet and having the team walk out from the outfield. But at some point, it's a little overboard. I mean, the Wall of Fame that they do where if you pitched in 3 innings, you make the Wall of Fame. I mean, I think the Eagles are a little bit more subtle in the way they do things. Maybe there's a happy medium somewhere in the middle.
Well, I feel like there's different groups of teams. Like obviously the teams that have significant history, Patriots most recently, 49ers, Cowboys, guys have won, teams that have won a significant amount of Super Bowls. The old school adage of act like you've been there. I don't want to hear about division titles, conference championships, fans who buy T-shirts. Oh, AFC South champions. That tells me that particular organization hasn't had a lot of great moments. When you've won Super Bowls, it's not that big of a deal. Now, on the other hand, it's a big deal for the players. It's a big accomplishment. So I have no problem. And as I told Jody, I've seen, Vikings NFC championship rings dating back to the 70s. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. So it's not rare. You should applaud the players and say, hey, great season. But don't celebrate it. Especially coming off Super Bowl 52. I agree with the Eagles.
And that's become the sports society that we've now grown up in is, the new generation is if you don't win the championship, any other accomplishment is not an accomplishment, right?
Yeah, you're right. because that
You know, if you're
bothers
not
me.
the thought of if you're not first, you're last, or if you can't
Yeah.
win, then lose purposely to try to win has become a theme. Not actually, Jody. It's not only here, but it has infiltrated to all sports in all levels. Where Oklahoma City's been losing purposely for about 4 years now. Well, everybody's excited about them now. They've got a ton of draft picks and talent, but that has become an accepted failed, even though you did something winning your conference that you set out to do at the start of the season. And that is no longer something that is really, if you won the pennant back in 1978, that was like you won the pennant. It was a huge accomplishment. Is it viewed the same way anymore to be the pennant winner? Apparently the Phillies think so. The Eagles, maybe not as much.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. I can't take pride in the fact that, hey, as the 76ers, we tanked longer and harder and better than anybody else. We should throw a parade for that. No, screw that. It took way too long, and it hasn't paid the price. So if you're going down that road, you're going to get nothing but a shake of the head from me. Sorry. The results are in. The tank hasn't worked, didn't work. It was more painful than anything I've ever seen in my sports fandom career.
I don't want to relitigate Goopy Sam Hinkie, but, Mike knows my feeling on that better than most. However, the larger part where I think Mike and I agree on is that, I don't everybody, and I think it was Giannis after the Bucks bowed out of the playoffs. He had a great press conference, and somebody asked him if this was a failure, and he's like looking at him. The whole point of it is, and he brought up Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, played 15 whatever season. So technically he lost more final games than he won, unless you're Bill Russell, who I think was 11-13. Just about everybody in sports history has lost their last game more than they won it. It's not a failure. Michael Jordan wasn't a failure in the seasons he didn't win titles. These Ricky Bobby rules, I agree with you. But it's not first your last. That's bull crap. And there is a whole generation of sports fans that really buys into that.
The notion, like in the NBA for in the NFL, maybe a little different. The winning your division is still a goal. The NBA, most people don't even know what division their team is even in, to let alone have that be something that they strive for. So, you talk about the Eagles win the NFC East last year. Winning your division still kind of matters because those rivalries have something still. There's not a lot of rivalries in sports where the divisions mean enough anymore either. So everything has been kind of downplayed, so much so that if you don't win the championship, you're a failure. The season wasn't worth it. We should lose on purpose so we can get a player that can help us win a title. You don't see it as much in football, although Arizona might be trying.
And it's getting closer, and we're going to have a guest on in the second hour. When you see this, scouts versus analytics, it's getting closer to that. We had Gary Myers on. Was that last week, Jody?
Couple weeks ago.
He had a great quote about the Harvardization of the NFL, where you got all these Ivy League guys coming in, and they all think the same way, and it's all about devaluing certain positions. Hello, running backs. Hello, Dalvin Cook. The kid in Pittsburgh was talking about it yesterday. He's like, "What? Am I going to get my money when it's my time? Probably not." I mean, because everybody thinks the same way. And baseball, it's probably the best example there. Look. Moneyball is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. I talk about it all the time. I love it. And Billy Beane was ahead of the curve. When everybody catches up, then it becomes the same thing, just in a different way. Everybody's doing the same thing. Then it becomes who does it best. You don't have an advantage anymore. He had an advantage because he was ahead of the curve. By the way, never won a title, but did tremendous things. Now nobody's ahead of the curve, and the smartest people in the world don't seem to get that. You can't just follow the leader. You got to be ahead of the curve. That's the point.
That's what our buddy Howie Roseman said earlier this year. I like to zig when other people zag.
Well, and that's what
you want to do. You want to be ahead of the curve, as John just pointed out. And one quickie, and I apologize for backtracking. Love Giannis. I'd love to have Giannis on a team that I'm rooting for. He's a class act, and he is a deep thinker. His status about was the season a success or a failure was irrelevant. They didn't ask him about Michael Jordan. They asked him about the Milwaukee Bucks of 2023. And when you win the most games in the regular season and you get picked off by an eight seed in the first round, your season's a failure because it's compared to expectations, not just there's only one champion and there are no such other things as failures. If only the champion can be only one succeed, then you can't call anybody else fail. I disagree. I think you can call a team a failure when you don't come close to meeting expectations before the season, and that's what happened to the Bucks this year. So,
especially,
I love you, Giannis, but I disagree with your stance.
Especially when we have the fans and the teams. The teams are a big part of this. They have devalued their regular season. So your regular season success of having the most wins has been devalued now because the teams have deemed the regular season. We're going to rest guys. We're going to load manage. We're not going to play guys. So the teams have told people the regular season is not as impactful. So therefore, your regular season success isn't as impactful. Now, is it as impactful in football? The Eagles were all the way to the Super Bowl. It still seems that in football, there is that impactfulness of being the best team. But in basketball, if you weren't the first or second seed, you weren't winning. That is kind of gone out the window. Home court advantage is no longer what it felt like it was. It feels like if football is the last sport, really, we're having a positive regular season. Also, and we've seen 9 and 7 teams win Super Bowls, but that's not the norm. But you're in hockey, the 8 seed made the Stanley Cup, the basketball, the 8 seed. You never saw an 8 seed. Heck, it was rare to see a 5, 6, or 7, or 8 even win the first round in basketball. Now it happens almost routinely. So it seems that the NFL is the last of the Mohicans. They're holding on here to this regular season to keep it compelling.
And there's a reason for it. And thanks for letting me jump in, Johnny Mac. In a series, if you get 4 out of 7 at home, that means you've got a 43% advantage of home field. 57% will be played. In football, it's one game. You got 100%. The other team's got 0 because they're not going to get a chance to play a home game. So, of course, the home field advantage in football is going to mean more in the postseason than it does in basketball and hockey and baseball because you're only getting 4 out of 7. It's not that big a deal. Football, it's one game. You got that home field advantage, and you're right.
But Mike brings up a good point because I don't know if this is youth or so I'll throw it out to both of you guys and get your opinion. I don't know if it's youth and just growing up versus it's changed so drastically. I was a big Sixers guy growing up. That was my favorite team in any sport. I was a Julius Erving guy. That was my team. That was my group. And when the Sixers played the Celtics back then, and I'm talking in the regular season, it was like huge. It was massive. Everybody's trying to kicking and screaming, trying to win the game. And ultimately, as you grow older, you realize, well, that didn't mean a sack of beans on a Wednesday in November. Who gives a flying? But people cared. It mattered. That rivalry mattered. It was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, greatest rivalry in sports. Now, there's nothing. You brought up the rivalries. These regular season games are utterly meaningless. Maybe best exemplified even by college basketball. When college basketball was, guys stayed for 4 years and became a big part of it. You had these huge rivalries in the Big East, the ACC locally. Now, the conference tournaments, you can go 30-2 in the regular season in some of these lower conferences, somebody sprains an ankle and you're one and done in the conference tournament. You're done. You're done.
Yeah,
Even though you had this large sample size. So
I think a lot of that is too, the talent is deeper than it was. So that means the fifth team is closer to the first team than the fifth team used to be. Back in the day, there was only so many extremely talented players. And if one team had them, the gap between 1 and say 8 was so wide. Now 8 and 1 are pretty close. And, you see the kids in college anyway, leaving early. But in the NFL, I don't know, Jody, you've been around a lot of Eagles-Cowboys games and a lot of Eagles-Giants games. Do they feel the same? Is there still Eagles-Cowboys? Even though it maybe doesn't feel the same, I still think that is something. If they played that game in October on a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, I think people still might not feel the same juice that we felt in 1989 or 1995 or 2005. But of all the games, I think that game still has some juice behind it.
I'll answer your question with a question. And we had Hunter Brody on here yesterday, which I'll tell you what Hunter said after I get you to answer the question, which I thought was telling and funny. Yesterday, Eagles single game tickets went on sale, and I assume they got snacked up in a matter of hours, if not minutes, on Ticketmaster. If you could only get tickets for one game for the Eagles' upcoming season, 8 home games, what game would you pick, Mike? I know you don't have the Eagles schedule in front of you.
Yeah, I don't have the Eagles schedule right in front of me, but I mean, I know the road games aren't all that good because I give away a trip to an Eagles road game, and I wasn't all that, I mean, if you ask me right off the top of the bat,
I'll run them down for you real quick. Home Minnesota, home Washington, home Miami, home Dallas, home Buffalo, home San Francisco, home Giants, home Cardinals. In that order, going through the calendar, I didn't give you the exact.
So I guess you're going to try to get me to say 49ers because that's the rematch, right? Or Buffalo.
On the schedule. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Oh, listen, and you're talking to somebody, though, I'm more of an Eagles-Giants rivalry guy than Eagles-Cowboys. I feel the Eagles-Cowboy is like a Hallmark holiday. It's not like a real holiday. This has been manufactured. Eagles-Giants is the big deal to me, because of the proximity and the fact that there's actual real Giants fans and people that live in this area. The Dallas people are just a bunch of fugazis. So I go Eagles-Giants more than the
locally.
Eagles.
They are locally.
These people are complete know-nothings. I mean, you ever talk to a Cowboys fan that lives around here? They've never seen.
Here's my issue with the Eagles-Giants. There was a great commercial back in the day when the Yankees would dominate the Red Sox, before the Red Sox came back and turned things around. They've won a bunch of titles. So this was before that. Alec Baldwin, the Yankees fan, John Krasinski, the Red Sox fan. And they would go back and forth and argue. And Baldwin shut it down by saying, hey, Kindling doesn't have a rivalry with fire. That's how I feel with the Eagles and Giants. The Eagles have dominated the Giants for so long now.
They have.
It can't be a rivalry when it's that one-sided.
Well, and the Giants, they have not had that glamour, I mean, really, the Giants organization is built around not having that glamour quarterback. I mean, Eli, even him was, he may be a Hall of Famer, but people never really looked at him as the reason. I say may. He wouldn't get my vote, but, he'll probably get in. But, yeah, I don't know. To answer your question, Jody, yes, probably if you said, hey, do you want a pair of tickets to a game? I'd say, hey, I'd like to see that game, Eagles-49ers. But I still do think that Dallas Eagles thing has some significance behind it for the NFC East.
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys are actually a little overrated coming into the year. I think it's Eagles 49ers, then a drop off. Most people seem to think it's Eagles 49ers, Cowboys, then the drop off thereafter. I think the bigger differentiation comes between 2 and 3 than 3 and 4. But that's my read as of right now. We still got a long time to go before we get there.
And I'm not talking about where they are competitively. I just think, that the Eagles fans still feel slighted as whatever to the Cowboys. There's a reason the Eagles-Cowboys thing became something to begin with. Eagles fans felt that they were the lesser and not getting, the same, hierarchy of Dallas. And that's still the case. Dallas still gets more pub and everything, even though they're the lesser team over the Eagles have accomplished more than Dallas has in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Agreed. But I guess here's the difference, the way you and I look at it, Mike. The actual level of rivalry would move the needle for me about 5% in making the decision on what game I want to go to. The quality of the team, what I think it's going to mean in the season, determining going to the playoffs, home field advantage, everything else, that's about 95%. Yeah. And I think San Francisco's better than Dallas. They were last year. They beat them in the playoffs 2 years running. And the whole, you talk about pumping up rivalry, the whole whining after the fact by 49er fans because Purdy got hurt just adds to it this year. Easy call for me. San Francisco over Dallas, no matter how big the rivalry
I think that always changes too with the expectations. The Eagles are a significant Super Bowl contender. So then it becomes larger than if it's a typical, you're going to be 500. Now you can't be 500, but if you're going to be 9-8 or 8-9, then it's like, what's a successful season? Oh, beating the Cowboys. Then it becomes more into. I think it gets more into the equation. But for the Eagles, they have larger aspirations right now as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So then, I mean. I remember Jody and I were talking about, the biggest game on the schedule, and he went Kansas City. And I can't go Kansas City for the reason of it's an AFC game. Like, it doesn't matter until the playoffs. Then hopefully you get back to the Super Bowl if it's Kansas City. But if you're going to lose a game in the NFL, you want to lose a out-of-conference game because it doesn't hurt you in the tiebreakers for the most part. So I never can go AFC game when I'm looking at a schedule for an NFC team and say, what's important? What's important? They probably got to beat San Francisco if they want to get the number 1 seed. So that's an important game.
Yeah.
But they got to beat Dallas because Dallas is going to be amongst the top teams, whether it's number 3, number 4. They're going to be fighting for the division title, the conference title. So those games to me are more important, but I just don't. Eagles fans don't like the Niners right now because of all the angst and whining and whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, I don't think, they'll forget about it.
By the way, the Eagles play Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas consecutively. That's a stretch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's the way we
that's going to say
over the Eagles schedule early this year. I like the way it laid out for the Eagles.
And I'd add Seattle to that too, real quick, because I think Seattle's going to be a good team.
So do I. Yeah, they got a really easy opening schedule. Then it gets really hard in the middle, and it gets light at the end. Sorry, Mr. Giants Eagles is still the best rivalry. No, it's not right now, because the Eagles kind of owned them last year, and they'll own them again this year unless they don't need to win that last game of the season. And even if
I acknowledge that the Giants aren't nearly as good. I just like the proximity, and then you get the Giant fans, give them credit. They are somewhat knowledgeable fans. They have passion for their team. They don't just live in a random state and pick a dart and throw it and say, hey, that star is really cute, I'll just cheer for them. No, they actually know their zip code. They have the proximity in place, and it makes for what should be a more impactful rivalry, even though they are the nail to the Eagles' hammer in recent times.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. we've gotten. I find this discussion interesting. I hope the fans like it, but we haven't talked much about the team, Mike. So I will turn it there a little bit. We didn't get much. We didn't see much. We saw 100 minutes. The reporters that were there. But we saw some interesting things, and I kind of look at themes. Christian Ellis, maybe he could push Nicholas Morrow to be that second linebacker. I thought Zach McPherson moving to the slot was interesting. All of a sudden, you have more depth outside. The Eagles have tremendous depth at cornerback now, and that wasn't necessarily the case in the past. But I think the most interesting thing to me, we've been talking about this the past couple of days, center for this reason. We all know Jason Kelce. It's not about Jason Kelce, but Jason's 35. We already saw it last year. The Eagles give him all these maintenance days during camp, like most of the veteran players, as they should. That matters for this reason, Mike. Cam Jurgens got to take over the right guard position. That's the hope. Well, if Kelce isn't practicing, somebody's got to play center. And are they going to kick Cam Jurgens back in the center? And does that affect his ability to learn right guard? All we know, Kelce wasn't there on the second OTA practice. They did indeed move Cam Jurgens back to center. Is that a surprise to you? And what does it mean? Does that mean they have so much confidence in Cam Jurgens? Or look, this is our excuse to look at Tyler.
No, we actually talked about this yesterday. I think it means they want Tyler Steen to win that job. They hope that he's the guy, and that he would be right now, I guess, the favorite to win that job. If you're telling Jurgens you're in the race for this job, but oh, by the way, when this guy's not here, you're going to go play that position, tells me I'm not getting a fair opportunity to win that job. If you're telling me I got to go play that job. The funny part is they get Steen, obviously, and here's Jack Driscoll, who, by the way, I heard bulked up a little bit. I don't know if you saw the same thing, John, but he's the only guy who's actually played that position in the NFL and has really not been – has been an afterthought in that spot there. But if you're telling one guy, you know, hey, I coach, right? Kid goes up to shortstop, the other kid goes to shortstop. Well, I know which guy I want to play the shortstop. The other guy say, hey, why don't I play more shortstop than I want to see you play shortstop? I think the Eagles are saying, I want to see more of this guy play right guard than I want to see you. You go back and play some center. Because if you're playing 7-on-7 and you just need someone to snap the ball, there's a third or fourth guy available if you wanted to give that guy a fair shot to get the reps with the other guy, don't you think?
Yeah, and it wasn't the 7-on-7. It was more the individual drills. So before, because they'll use Brett Toth or Cameron Tom at times to snap the ball in 7-on-7s. But when they did individual work and they work on sort of the combination blocks, center, right guard, center, left guard, with Jurgens working at center, Tyler working at right guard, I was a little surprised that they went down that road because they have so many guys with the 90-man roster that can play center. You know, maybe you don't want Brett Toth playing it in a game,
right?
But he can play it. Cameron Tom can play it. Julian Good-Jones can play it. They got a bunch of guys who can play center. So, yeah.
Well, the Eagles' mentality over the years, you know, if a guy gets hurt, they don't want to move multiple guys to move positions. They only like, so that kind of also would say, well, Kelce, he's been pretty healthy over the last couple of years, but he is getting older. You know, if someone got hurt, Kelce, do they want to play Jurgens at right guard, have to move him to center, then insert? That's two moves. So it would seem again with that Jurgens would be the backup center, and they hope that Tyler Steen would win that job.
That's you stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say, because the guy who's most likely going to make this decision, Stoutland, is on the record as saying, I'd rather just take one guy out, plug one guy in, than move two guys and have two guys outside their comfort zone. So that's why I kind of do agree with you, Mike. I need a crystal ball look from you, big guy. Week 1, New England Patriots, September 10th. Eagles win the coin toss and defer, because they always defer. And Elliott kicks it out of the back of the end zone. So the Patriots get it 1st and 25, 1st and 10 from the 25. Eagles in their base set, 2 linebackers on the field. Who are they?
Well, it's Nakobe Dean definitively. My other answer would probably be the guy's not here yet, but if you're making me take a guy that's currently on the roster, I'm going to stick with Nick Morrow.
If you want to go, the guy's not here yet, I can't tell you, Joe. That's an acceptable answer.
All right. Yeah. I will go with Nakobe Dean definitively, and somebody that is not here at this time would be the second guy.
Yet to be an Eagle. That, for me, that's an acceptable answer because I agree with it. I think the linebacker is yet to be acquired.
You know, you asked me last week an interesting question about, like, you know, what duo do you have, concerns about? The 2 new safeties, the 2 new linebackers, or the 2 new linemen, and it's got to be, you know. And I like Dean. I think he's going to be an excellent, impactful player. I just don't know who the other guy's going to be at this point. And if it's one of the guys that are here, I know Christian Ellis is is he Hank Basket? Is he Mr. Lehigh? Or is he going to actually be able to – these are the Lehigh days, right, when you had a wide receiver that stood out and you were like, how come this guy can't play? You know?
Paul Turner, baby.
Paul Turner. Yeah, Paul Turner. So, yeah, that linebacker spot. And look, I guess the safety spot get – you know, we talk about what these OTAs mean. Christian Ellis used these OTAs now to put himself in position to say, hey, I want to see more of this guy when he gets to training camp. Because, quite frankly, most people watching this probably didn't know who Christian Ellis was. And the Eagles coaches now say, okay, when we put the pads on, I want to see if you can duplicate what you did in that 2 weeks with the pads off. So what he does with those training camp reps, if he does get more, that's on him.
Sorry to interrupt, John. What was Hank Basket's wife name again? Kendra?
Kendra Wilkerson. Yeah.
Isn't she due for another reality series? We haven't had Kendra in about a decade. I miss Kendra. Where's Kendra?
No.
Yeah. Kendra. Yeah.
No, she has a new.
She does have.
She has a new show now on HGTV where she's a real estate agent.
Get out of here.
Yeah, she's a real estate agent and she was trying to. I don't know. I couldn't believe it was her. I was like, "Is that Kendra?" You know, I was at the Super Bowl in New York.
Glory days of Eagles, wags, wives and girlfriends. You had AJ Bealey with Heather Mitz, and you had Jeff Garcia. What was his girlfriend's name?
He had a Playboy Playmate model wife as well.
Yeah,
I had when I was at the Super Bowl in New York, we had Hank Basket and Kendra were walking around, and they stopped by at Radio Row with what was this? Whenever that New York Super Bowl was, that had to be like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, that was I remember seeing Jennifer Gardner on Radio Row. Carmela Cesare was her name. Is her name? Very fetching woman.
Jeff Garcia. Well, I don't know which is more surprising: the fact that Kendra's got a show on HGTV, or that Mike Gill found it on HGTV. Both of those are quite surprising to me, but maybe Kendra more. Kendra, a real estate agent, really? Okay, I got to see that. I'm doing on demand as soon as the show's over today.
And her kids, who are Hank's kids, are in the show a lot. I mean, they're
really
part of the whole show is that she was like a real estate assistant, and she was trying to impress them to hire her. And one of the days she was doing a showing and she had her kids with her and she had to hide them in the basement because she had she didn't have anything where to bring them.
That's high quality TV right there. I gotta go
stuff.
back and check that out. All right, Gil, where are you drinking this afternoon? Are you going to be on the air?
Sadly, I am working. I am on the air. I don't know when I have some time. I'm going to be off a little bit coming up here in the next couple of weeks, but I'm on the air today, and you can always catch us football at 4. We'll talk some Eagles for all you Eagles nuts out there.
Check it out at 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike Gill, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
MG
Mike.
We'll have a new swag T-shirt too.
Yeah, you know what? But I remember about Hank Baskets. He was undrafted, and he actually got traded to the Eagles as an undrafted player. You rarely see that.
Who'd they get him from? I'm forgetting that now.
Minnesota. He was undrafted, and they traded him for the great Billy McMullen, who was great because of his last name.
Yeah. And I'll suggest that Hank Basket did more for the Not than Billy McMullen.
Oh, he did. He most certainly did. And Billy McMullen was a 3rd round pick. But 3rd round is 3rd round, and he did not do much.
Is that Joe Banner? That's before Howie got the chair, right?
That's like early 2000s. 2003, the 95th overall pick, 2003.
Okay.
So Howie was here, but he was lower level.
Right. It was a probably Joe Banner deal. All right. Johnny Mac hanging out with you here on Birds 365. I did mention this at the top if you just tuned in or jumped in during the middle. Alex Vigderman is going to join us. He is the director of football analytics for Sports Information Solutions. Matt Manicherian joins us leading up to the draft. He's a big contributor to their draft guide, which combines both the scouting eye and the analytical look at football. Alex is going to join us. He's the director of the analytic side of things, the comparison between scouting and stats. It's a fun way to break down football. We'll do some of that with Alex Vigderman coming up in just 20 minutes from now here on Birds 365.